Welcome to another episode of the Tapestry podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Froswá, and I have got my most amazing, wonderful friend. Y'all have missed the interview because we already had the conversation before we got started. But because you were not here, I'm going to introduce her, and then we will continue this amazing conversation. So Jin-Ya Huang is a social impact, community development, and creative innovator with a focus on the intersection of equity, design, and social justice work. She is the founder of Break Bread, Break Borders, a social enterprise empowering refugee women economically through the storytelling of food and culture. Jin-Ya is an expert in global marketing and has over a decade of extensive background in advertising for Fossil, JCPenney, Neiman Marcus, and Keurig and Dr Pepper. She is an acclaimed interdisciplinary artist who is shown in galleries in Dallas, Miami, and New York. Her work examines her Asian identity and diasporic immigrant experience. Jin-Ya is an accomplished published writer and public speaker. Her work has been featured at the Bush Institute, Amon Carter Art Museum, TEDx, Slow Food USA, Southern Living, Today's Show, NPR Morning Edition, and Time Magazine. She's bad, y'all. Highlighted as a community bridge builder across America. Friend, welcome to the show.
Oh, hi. Thank you, Froswá. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's dig in because I want to talk about, it's so much I want to talk about with you, but I want to talk about your mother. Your mother was such a shaper, an influence, a catalyst for who you are. Talk about the impact of your mother and the influence that she had in you being the woman you are today.
I absolutely will take any chance to rave about my mother. So my mom, Margaret Mei Huang, is really the inspiration, my North Star, really the pillar that I have really looked up to, all this time. And I think she was a chef. She was very much a community leader. And she just raised us to be tiny philanthropists, actually, when we were growing up.
Love that.
Yeah. So I grew up in Taipei, Taiwan, and my parents actually, brought us to America when I turned 13 to help out my aunt and uncle with their restaurant business. And so my mom, being the chef at the time, really was doing some really incredible work in the kitchen. She would train immigrants, refugees, and just, how to cook and actually give them job skills and send them on to bigger and better opportunities. And I was too young and stupid, when I was little to really realize what she was doing, that she was transforming lives along the way. And all the little things that even, when we were going to school and then, on weekends to help out at the restaurant or going to volunteer at the housing, people with housing issues at the homeless shelter, or, sewing blankets for folks, or singing really off key at nursing homes, and playing the piano, and for elders, and helping her cook, for galas at the temple. And there were just so many things that she brought us along and really role modeled, and that what it's like to show up for the community, And I am so grateful that I was surrounded by so much love that she shared with us and all the people around us. And I just admire her to the core, and to this day, losing her to cancer, to multiple myeloma, still hits me pretty hard. But I find everything that I do, I try to honor her legacy every day. So.
And that's what I wanted to point out was the legacy piece.
Yeah.
Your mom instilled so much in you that you are carrying now, and then you created an organization that is legacy building as well for women. And so talk about break bread, break borders, because I remember when you got started.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us more about how that came to fruition and what it is.
Yeah, so my ancestors were escaping communism and to take refuge in Taiwan. And so for a long time, I really heard those oral history, those stories of, my father's side of the family actually lived through Japan colonizing Taiwan, formerly known as Formosa. And my father actually grew up during the war, and he was forced to have Japanese education. And to this day, he still speaks Japanese fluently.
Wow.
And challengingly enough, I would hear these stories about food ration and even rationing soy sauce on top of rice, tofu, and things like that. And I just knew what kind of trauma and hardship that was like. And coming here to America, my mom was so mindful about helping folks like us and like our ancestors, and really being intentional about paying that forward, right? Because it is one thing to have privilege, and it's another thing to really stay silent, because that's also a privilege. And so she used her voice, and she used her superpowers, and everything she did was really to amplify our community. And so when she passed, I thought, how do I want to be remembered? This is how I remember my mother. And like I was saying earlier, every chance I get, I'm going to, talk about her every day. And I just thought, this is something, Break Bread, Break Borders is something that we would have actually loved to have done together, is cooking with women from all around the world, and really just celebrate their food and culture, and sharing that storytelling of who they were before they came from war-torn countries, what it's like to live as refugees abroad, and how it feels to immigrate to America, and then what it's like to cook with Break Bread, Break Borders. And it's not just a catering company. It is a sisterhood. It is built like a family, and every time the ladies cook, my mother's spirit comes to life, and I think about how they're passing this skill, this skill that a lot of them don't think is a job skill. They just think, oh, I'm just cooking. This is just a recipe from 5 generations passed down, and I'm always like, it's not just this. It is so much more than that, and it is your pride. It's making a living with dignity. It is sharing your heritage, for the world, and helping people understand, the plight of refugee rights and immigrant rights are just as much as human rights, and letting women and girls take their power back.
Yes.
And so much of that is like, you think we're just cooking? We're really starting a revolution in the kitchen.
I love it. And it's the relationship building.
Yes.
That is
it
crucial.
Really matters. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And we were talking earlier, so much of our cultures are around oral tradition.
Yes.
And the relationship building.
Yes.
And I think we've lost so much of that, because you think about family dinners and people coming together. It wasn't just about food.
Mm-mm.
It was the relationship and the stories and passing down this intel, this wisdom that we don't have as much anymore.
No. And I think that's the thing. It's, how do we get that back? How do we really celebrate all of that together? Because those are the spaces you build relationships, and you tell each other how you love each other through food, mind you.
Yes.
My father didn't hug me until I was like 21. I mean, You just didn't know how, and it's always, have you eaten? Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Oh, here's some cut fruit. That's their form of love, right? But that's the thing. It's that expression, in such a way that something happens, when you break bread together. You really break down borders at the time, because no matter what your differences are, and what challenges you might have, it's almost like, when you share a plate of food, you know how to disagree better, you know how to have courageous conversations, and something about that bond is such a universal language. My training really is as a social practice artist, and I often talk about how, when my community asks for water, I don't bring it fire. And so when you're practicing art and telling truth in this way, it is really bringing that clarity, for the community together. And there's something about doing that together, really thinking about the collective impact, and really thinking about the legacy impact, and really thinking about that social impact together. I think that has been really our focus, with Break Borders.
And it's been lost. And I love that you're doing that, because I don't think we recognize the power of the collective, that there is something to be said when we are in community with each other. And I love that you're doing that. You do that through art too. And even though food is an expression and cooking is an expression, you're an artist. How did you get into that space? And talk about, what does it mean to use art as a form of voice and power?
I think it was really by default. It was almost because English is not my first language. It's my second language. And learning how to communicate bilingually was really challenging coming here at 7th grade, And so I went from Taipei, Taiwan to Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Wow.
Froswá.
Wow. That alone is like, oh my God.
It was a culture shock.
Ooh,
and
just hearing it, I'm like, oh, how did you do that? Oh
yeah, well, it was through art. I did, contrary to popular opinion, I did not excel in math or science. And so I really needed something that was a language that I can lean into, And so in art, I thrived. I was able to communicate fully. I was winning awards, and I was able to, really show up and shine. And through that, I was able to tell my immigrant diaspora stories of, crossing large waters, being Asian, being American, being East, being West, how to embody, both and be a nice, excellent combination, of that, because there's no such thing as a perfect combination, right? We can only find the right mix. And I realized, that when I started making art, and when I started talking about, celebrating the hundreds of paintings or the hundreds of photographs that I made that are absolute failures, and and throwing them away and starting over again, and looking at them as opportunities, to begin again, and to find success in those moments. I realized that when I started talking about it, that I wasn't saying anything new under the sun, celebrating failure as a part of success, but I realized that because I'm saying it as an Asian American woman, that was what people needed, especially folks that never see someone who looks like them, sound like them, and feels the same as them.
That representation is
that
critical.
Representation, saying these words, and it meant something, and it transcended into, what they wanted to do in their lives, and how they wanted to make different choices, and the fact that I'm taking up space, I think that was really what made a difference. And I still have, to this day, people reach out to me and say, I can't believe, you shared this out loud, and it made such an impression on me. And it was something that I realized that it's okay to make mistakes, and it's actually okay to come through failures and make mistakes, and that's how I'm actually going to find success and find my why, my purpose, and you know, my superpowers and how I use that for good. And I'm super glad about that.
But I want to go back to what you just said. This taking up space. It's so interesting you brought that up, because I was talking about this earlier this week about when you look at dogs and cats both look at a space and determine, is this something I want to enter into?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we recognize the power of space and taking up space. Talk more about how you've done that, not just with breaking bread, break borders. You do that as a philanthropist. You are in so many spaces, I see you, where you're going in and it's not this, I'm embarrassed to be here. Because for many of us as women, we shrink when we're in spaces that are unfamiliar.
Mm.
And to watch you walk in and go, my space. Talk about that. And how did you arrive at a place to be able to take up space and embody wherever you are?
Well, it takes our community, it takes our sisterhood, it takes our families, it takes our tribe and everybody, you know, showing up together. It takes a lot of practice, and then it becomes muscle memory, you know. But I'm so grateful to have been accepted to so many different leadership programs and recognized, you know, for awards.
Presidential Scholar.
Presidential Leadership Scholars Program, Civic Collaboratory at Citizen University, Dallas Summit, our sisterhood there, at Orchid Giving Circle, and so many more. And just, you know, talking about food justice, about social justice, about human rights, about, you know, gender equity, and how so many of us, you know, really need to find our way in such a positive light. It really took it. I'm still learning, and that's the thing. But I couldn't have done it without everybody's support, and I think that's the thing. I joke with the cooks sometimes that, you know, even though I don't know how to cook as well as they do, I'm like, but I'm really good at taking out the trash. And so it's knowing your part, showing up and doing your part, and really, you know, being a part of that togetherness, you know. And I think I could not have done this without the community. And there's that unity in community, right? You know, and doing this together, nor do I want to do it by myself, you know, because that's the thing. It's like, that's no fun, you know, but doing this together with the folks that I really love and care about has really been meaningful along the way.
We talked earlier about the challenges that women have and in the spaces that women occupy. And that for many of us, you see this outer piece of success. I look at you and I go, oh my God, you've done so many amazing things. You've done both success and significance, but it's been at a cost. Talk about what you've seen in terms of the cost and the sacrifice that you see women making, that you've made, and how do you reconcile, you know, where you're not just focused on being the superwoman with the S on your chest, but you're also able to embrace, as you said, when things don't work so well, when it may be failure. And I don't think it's failure as much as it's an opportunity to learn. How have you been able to do that and be in spaces to help others do that?
Gosh, I think you have to come through the experience to really understand it. You know, I'm a domestic violence survivor. I have been divorced. I'm a single mom. And I am, you know, definitely getting lots of rejection letters, you know, to different things along the way. But it's about taking that in and understanding that that doesn't define me. Sure, it's really it's horrible and painful. And, you know, but living through that and really turning grief into action. I think I've been super lucky and fortunate in the way that I've been able to find tools along the way to help cope with these challenges throughout life. And when friends, stepped in to help out when I needed, therapy and counseling, when friends stepped in and said, you know what, here's a better role, that is going to be way better for you so you can lean into your womanhood and your motherhood and really lead the way you want to lead. And you don't have to be toxic about it. You can be super nice. And that's another one of those things that my mother used to talk about, is just kill them with kindness, and three of the things that she really taught me along the way that I always share is, number one, you do the right thing. Number two, you be a good neighbor. And number three, whatever happens, practice kindness and compassion every day. And interestingly enough, I think upholding these golden rules of my mom's really helped me navigate through these incredibly muddy waters. And it was definitely tough, juggling corporate jobs and trying to do a social enterprise, or, the impactful business that is, benefiting the community and something the community is asking for, and not just something that I thought they should have, right? It was a mutual conversation, and that loop feedback was super important. And just being open to those possibilities, I think that was really what was a game changer for me, that just because my mother didn't get to finish elementary school and that they didn't value girls or women, in the culture that I grew up in, and just because my mother had to get married so young and start a family and not really pursue her dreams, she always talked about, just because that was her story, that it doesn't have to be mine.
Yes.
And so, that may be my story at this time, but as time moves, how we embrace the possibilities. And I think it was Adrienne Murray Brown that talks about how, when we do this type of work, social justice work, it's almost like practicing science fiction in a way, that you're imagining a world that actually, a universe that doesn't exist yet.
Yes.
And so you embrace the possibilities of that, and you find folks, who want to actualize those dreams with you. And along the way, you lift as you climb. And there is something really incredibly beautiful about that process, that even when my son was asking, can you just bring your laptop to bed so you can read my bedtime story? You don't love hearing things like that, but when he says, I know you're super busy, but I love you because you're helping people. And,
That's
and then,
huge.
going to school and saying, can you give me a heads up next time you do something cool? And the counselor is sharing this like career strategy video that you did, for Road Trip Nation. And, that how, like, if you do what you love, the rest will come. And, give me a heads up when you do stuff like that, so I can say, like, my friends were like, hey, that's your mom on TV. What's going on? You're hanging out with the presidents. What's going on?
That makes it all worth
right.
it.
And it's just like, he's like, I know you're making a difference, and I know we're doing something good, and like, I want to celebrate that with you, and I just want to make sure you're happy, and so we're happy together as a family. And so I hope I'm doing something right, but and so all that, there's a lot of bitterness of the pain, and it is growing pains, right, along the way, because you have to navigate these really rough patches along the way. But when you see the community come together and celebrate
And
something.
your son.
Oh,
See, coming together and going, Mama, I see you.
yeah.
Because when they're little like that, you're just bringing them along and stuff. And they're like, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
And when they get the realization
Yes.
of the impact that you have,
Mm-hmm.
it's the coolest thing to watch your kid go, oh, you're not just doing stuff.
Mm-mm.
You really are making it better for people.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest win ever. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
girl, success, mic drop when your kid does that, because it is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, people look at the end result and see what you've been able to do, and they don't see the grief.
Mm-mm.
They don't see the rejection and the doors closing and the nights of tears and staying up. They don't get to see that. And I think part of the story that we don't tell well as women is that piece.
Mm-hmm.
I think we always show everybody the makeup and we're all together, right? But we never show that it's a both and. And I think that's what you've done so well, is you've been able to show the both and of, I've done some amazing work, but it's been at a cost too.
Mm-hmm.
And that cost has been worth it, because look at not only the growth that you have. And I think sometimes we want it to be, it's all about everybody else. It has to be both. You have to benefit too.
Mm-hmm.
And you have, and you've grown because of that. I want you to think back to when you were first coming to this country and who you are now. What would you tell that little girl now based on what you've experienced?
Don't stress. Just don't stress. I'm still telling myself that. Don't stress. And everything happens for a reason, and everything will work out. And yeah, this is, I remain very, very hopeful, because we have an incredible community, and we have such powerful people doing this work together. You and so many others. And, thank you so much for sharing our stories and elevating, Asian voices and really amplifying, women at our best. And I think that's the thing. It's, I would tell my younger self to not fret, and that everything will work out, and that hope is a good thing, and that we can do this together.
It is. When we lose that, we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm,
and so in this work, that's what we have to hang on to.
Yes.
And to each other. And
Yes.
I love you for who you are and what you do.
Thank you.
How can folks find you? Give them websites, social media, all of the things. How can they find you?
Just find us at, really honestly, at Jin-Ya Huang and Break Borders. And honestly, you Google search that and just, we're kind of everywhere.
She's got pages and pages and pages.
Well, we're squeaky wheels. We really want to make belonging a thing. And so it should be accessible, and we want to be as welcoming and as loving as and as amazing, just like my mother. So
yes.
Yeah.
Thank God for you and your mother and
Thank
what
you.
you continue to do every day in community.
Thank
You're
you.
a gift.
Thank you.
And I thank you for the blessing you are to me and so many others. And so this has been another episode of the Tapestry Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Froswá Booker-Drew. And check out more of our episodes. If you thought she was amazing, there are a lot of other amazing women that you'll get to learn from their stories as well. Take care.